Hey Brad, how's it going?
Oh, I'm doing just fantastic, Mark. How are you doing?
Oh man, we're in the middle of the playoffs. What could be better?
I am not sure if the Calgary Flames and Toronto Maple Leafs are in it, maybe?
Yeah. Let's go.
He shoots. He scores.
You're listening to The Neutral Zone with Brad and Mark. Coming at you from the land of the free.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Guys with the Neutral Zone. I'm here with my buddy Brad.
How's it going?
And I am Mark. Brad, we're in the midst of the playoffs here, and there's just absolutely no way. I know we say this every show, but there's no way you could call what's going on in the playoffs this year. Am I right?
I would say you're right. I don't think anyone saw New York getting swept in 4 games.
No.
That was crazy.
Yeah, the Islanders sweep Pittsburgh, and then they get swept.
Yeah.
First time that has happened since 1993 with the Buffalo Sabres, which I actually remember. Some weird part of my brain tells me I remember this, right?
You just got to remember that weird little scenario.
Kind of, yeah.
So it's been a lot of firsts, like not first, but firsts in a long time this season. It's been weird.
Well, the whole entire playoffs. We got Calgary out already, right?
Well, we talked about that in the past
out.
shows. It's been just wild.
The two of those teams were out in like a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Neither one seemed to put up a fight against either one of their opponents.
Yeah, it's been...
Who would have thunk?
It's been bizarre.
Nobody. Everybody said it, right? We would put our entire paychecks on the air.
For sure, and I think the only non-surprise would be Boston, which, as we're recording this, just finished the series off against Columbus.
Yep.
So, and Columbus, I mean, that's an interesting one. We've talked about that in past shows. What are they going to do after trading all the picks that they did for the guys that are free agents?
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully, they can sign some of those guys.
Duchesne and Dzingel.
Duchesne and DeShingle.
Those that's a combination. That's a good line. That's a good line name they got there. DeShingle.
The DeShingle line.
The DeShingle line. They're gonna stick together, re-sign somewhere.
Yeah, whether it's in Columbus or somewhere else, I think they're close buddies, right? So I'd see them. So where do you think they're going? Do you think they're staying in Columbus?
Well, I think it depends on what Panarin might do. Although it's a good opportunity for Duchesne, I guess. Now that I'm saying it out loud. If Panarin doesn't sign there, it's a good opportunity for Duchesne to probably cash in a little bit. I think that if maybe Columbus cannot re-sign Panarin, then maybe they get a little bit of extra money to a guy like Duchesne to stick around, right?
Yeah, and the other big question mark there is Bobrovsky staying or is he gone?
Yeah, boy,
we kind of thought he's gonna go, right?
He's such a tough guy to read. You thought that he seemed so sour at the club, but seemed to be enjoying his time with them in the playoffs. But when you're winning and you're having fun,
everything's better when you're winning. Yeah, and watch, he's going to sign in Edmonton. Watch, that's where he's going to go. Ken Holland, new general manager. We'll talk about that here a little bit here later on in the show, but that'll be his big first move. He'll sign Bobrovsky. He'll have his tandem along with Koskinen.
Yeah. Well, Ken Holland, right? That's the big name that everybody's talking about in Edmonton right now.
Yeah, we can talk about him in a few minutes because we can dedicate a little bit of time to him and how what he's going to do for Edmonton. But
okay, let's just talk about Columbus because they're freshly out of the playoffs here.
Yeah, just now, like
they got
20 minutes ago.
They got Let me look here. I'm just looking at Cap Friendly. Okay, they got Panarin, who's a free agent. Duchesne, free agent. Dzingel, free agent. Adam McQuaid, who's a free agent. Sergei Bobrovsky, and Keith Kincaid, who's also going to be a free agent.
So both their goalies are free agents.
Yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't Kincaid that they are using so much as the backup there, though. I don't know if Korpisalo was their favorite or not, but there were other guys who were making more money than him. Although Korpisalo,
He's a goalie, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
he was the guy backing up Bobrovsky kind of down the stretch there. Merzlinkis, something like that.
Never heard of him.
No, he gets 1.8 million. That's why I'm saying his name.
So can you imagine going from a tandem of, and I mean, Kincaid's not the be all end all either, but imagine going from a tandem of Bobrovsky and Kincaid to Korpisalo and what's this other guy's name?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that would be a huge downgrade, right?
No, exactly. You're going to want to pay him something. Bobrovsky was getting $7.5 million.
Yeah,
you
if you
got to
lose
be able
that.
to keep him for another $7.5 million, right? He's not going to get more than that, is he?
You never know. It depends where he goes, I guess, and does he want to stay, right?
What is
So
a goaltender like him worth? He's not worth more than
no, he's not worth
$7.5.
$7.5 million. But the thing is, too, you got to
I
consider.
think he's worth $7.5.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it depends.
He's
I mean,
a proven winner,
He's up and down.
these playoffs he has looked good.
Yeah, you know, and this is the other thing to consider. It's going to fall into another Mark Stone situation where the rumors have been that the team that was trying to grab him at the deadline was Florida, right? And if he wants to go to Florida, because
Yeah.
Florida's going to lose Luongo, he's probably going to retire. So if Bobrovsky wants to go to Florida, no state tax,
That's true.
cha-ching, right? It's a matter of it. Like they're going to have an upper hand if they want to get him and bring him in. Is that they're not going to have to pay him quite as much.
He could, yeah, that's a good point.
So I mean, they could pay him $7.5 there too, and it'd be worth the equivalent of what, 11 million or 10 million. I mean, it depends. You have to look at how their state tax works. But again, just another. I mean, to me, I think Bobrovsky's out the door. I think I think we talked about this in the show before. They need to focus on signing some of those forwards, right?
Right. Well, it doesn't look like they free up enough. I mean, I'm just looking at the numbers here, but it looks like they might have $3 million of cap space right now. I don't know. So you're able to shed him. So maybe you're left with 11 million or so. You can't keep all your names there. Who do you pick? Who do you ship out?
It all depends on the feedback I think you get from Panarin.
Dubinsky's 5.8. Okay, I think that's an overpayment. Nick Foligno, their captain, is at 5.5.
And that's too much for him, in my
I think
opinion.
that's too much as well. Alexander Wenberg comes at 4.9. I agree. Boone Jenner, 3.7. That's a steal. Okay, Riley Nash, 2.75. I could go on and on. I think that those are kind of their first, their picks of the litter there. Seth Jones was their superstar of the playoffs.
He was excellent.
Bobrovsky.
He was excellent.
He was excellent out there. He logged tons of minutes for them.
And he's been kind of the revelation for them this season because I think they were counting on Werenski to carry forward his performance from last year, and he didn't quite live up to the standard he set last year. It wasn't bad, but he just wasn't quite there. But Seth Jones definitely took a step forward, right? So they have a good young defense core in Columbus.
Zach Werenski is going to be an RFA next year.
That's a tough one too. They're in a weird balancing act. And the problem for Columbus, I think, you rattled off a few guys there. Mm-hmm. Those are all guys that, to me, on a cup contending team, are second liners at best.
If you can't bring back Panarin, and you can't bring back Bobrovsky, and you lose those guys because you can't afford them, can you make them? And let's say you can keep Duchesne and Dzingel. Okay, can you make a team that can contend like this again, based off what you have again next year?
I don't think so. Like, if you want to look at contracts and compare contracts, I know contracts are signed at different times, and you kind of got to compare all that. But let's look at those guys like Foligno, right? He's making 5.5. He said. Mm-hmm. If you pull up Colorado, I'm pretty sure. What does McKinnon make? Let's take a look at what McKinnon makes. I remember hearing one time that he was probably one of the best value contracts in the NHL, and that's not. I mean, no matter what McKinnon was making, that's probably true because the guy's proven he's just taken that next step in these playoffs and kind of had another coming out party, I guess. In terms of getting
$6.3 million.
So think about that. You have Nathan McKinnon making $6.3 million. The guy's a superstar stud.
He gets that for like the next 4 years.
And in Columbus, you got Foligno making $5.5 million. He's making $0.8 million less than McKinnon.
I don't like this comparison to contracts, and I'll tell you why.
I know where you're going with it. Yeah.
It's so hard to do it like that
Because when you sign them at different
signs
times.
them at a different time when the salary cap was at a different era.
Very true.
At a different point in time. And then, we all like to look and go like, wow, look, Crosby, 8.7 million. What a steal now. Nathan MacKinnon. Okay, now when we look at this Nathan MacKinnon one, I think it was an 8-year deal. So this one started about 3 or 4 years back.
So look when he signed his and when Foligno signed his.
$6.3 million was handed out at this point. That was pretty high, right?
True.
That was high up there. Only in the last year or so have we really, or 2 years, have we watched the cap stretch into that $10 million and over. Right?
For sure. I mean, Ovi's had that over $10 million contract type thing for a long time. But that's Alexander Ovechkin, right? I mean, that's
Right.
different. He was an exception to the rule. When did Foligno sign his contract? I guess is a good question.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because if you looked at that, I'm wondering. I'm
he was
just
kind
curious.
of a long-term guy as well.
And the other thing you got to think about McKinnon is until last year, he was highly touted. He hadn't quite lived up to it yet. Like there was a lot of talk 2 years ago that was Sean Monahan out of Calgary just as good as McKinnon, because he was outpacing him at that point for points, because McKinnon had a slow start to his career, right? So, and we know now, I mean, McKinnon's just on a different level than a guy like Sean Monahan. Monahan's a fantastic player, but McKinnon's just a superstar, right? So, yeah, I know what you're saying. When you're comparing contracts, you're breaking down a very complex
It's pretty
thing
tough
to
do,
something
I think,
far
right?
too simple. So yeah, I agree. It's just kind of a funny comparison to make, and that's why I think Columbus will find themselves in a tough situation.
Well, I think
It's all timing, right?
I think the comparison is really funny to make when, let's say you're a Colorado fan and I'm a Toronto fan, and you can say, oh, I got Nathan MacKinnon for 6.3. How much are you paying for Tavares?
Oh, true.
Right?
And to make everybody clear, I'm not a Colorado fan. So, but very true. I mean, you make a good point. It's the fact that you can't compare things. Like you said, they're all signed at different times. They're signed for different lengths. There's different variables in all those things. I mean, a $10 million contract now is probably the equivalent to a $6 or $7 million contract 3-4 years ago. It's gone up dramatically and exponentially over the last 2 years.
And as these caps jump so much in the air, like as fans, we look at it so one-dimensional, because at the end of the year, when our teams are tight against the cap, we want to see it go up so much, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when all of a sudden you see it jump up 6 or 7 million, that's good for you, because you know that 6 million can get you potentially a top 6 forward, right? Possibly a top 4 defenseman, right? It really helps add a little extra to that team that you think you might need.
It does, yeah.
That being said, too, though, that means that the average cap can jump up per player.
Yeah, the other variable you got to play into it too, and it's something that I find very interesting. You know, we're in an era where it seems like, and maybe we're going to see it stop here soon, but we've seen the cap rise over the last several years. We've seen player salaries rise over the last several years. If you look around the globe, though, and not to get political or get into any kind of non-hockey talk, I know here in Canada, if we're talking about where we live in our region, I don't know too many people who are going to spend $300, $400, $500 a ticket on hockey right now, because they just can't. I mean, the economy is not where it should be. So how are they going to justify these high salaries when fans can't justify spending the money that they're going to need to sustain that, right? So I think that we're in for another course correction via another lockout, or at least another pending possible lockout. I guess we'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, if we start thinking about, I mean, let's get this getting off of the topic here, but if you start thinking about the correction of the salary cap, and all of a sudden thinking that, hey, we're 20 million too high, bring it back down, that means that we have to readjust all the
salary rollbacks.
All of our contracts so far, right?
Yeah, they might have to if things continue. You know, and I mean, especially. I mean, let's be serious. You don't have to worry about what's going on in the rest of the world, but in Canada and the United States, if we're suffering...
You think that all the players are honestly going to agree to that as well?
I guess that's where another lockout comes, right? So hopefully that dodoesn't happen. But I mean, this is a topic for another show. We're kind of getting off track. So,
well, listen, poor Columbus today.
Yeah, it's a tough loss.
I was really rooting for them. I love that. I love the fact that they just seem to mesh well with Tortorella this year. Somebody got along with that jailbird, and they rocked it. You know, for 2 solid rounds. They really gave a good effort. I love the team. I wish I could watch them play again next year, doing this again. Unfortunately, the team's going to look different, but I also think that they do have some great leaders coming up on that team. They're set for the future as well. Unfortunately, they don't. They might not make the playoffs next year, but they're not far away from it after all, right?
Yeah, I would agree. And the one thing I'm looking forward to not having to hear for the rest of the playoffs, though, is Tortorella say to another media guy, "Don't ask me stupid questions." I can't count how many times I've heard Tortorella say, "That's such a stupid question. Don't ask me stupid questions." So I'm not going to miss that. I mean, Tortorella is a funny character.
One more time, I bet, before one more time.
Probably. Yeah. He's a funny character. It's just he's a little abrasive sometimes, and it can. Yeah, it's a.
So
different.
Let's look at the other series that seemed to be over before it began.
Okay.
And that was the Carolina and Islanders series.
Which we talked about, being such a weird,
such a flash.
New York sweeping and then being swept. It was a weird one, and I think we talked about before the series started that Boychuk being out, and missing that series. I think that really hurt them because their main thing was defense, right? And he's a big part of that.
Right.
What did you think of the series? Did you watch much of it?
I watched a little bit of it because I thought that was going to be the more of the entertaining series to watch, and it was. It was actually still entertaining hockey. I thought that in Game 2, the Islanders played a really good game. They should have won it. I think they lost that one 2-1 or something like that.
It was close in Games 1 and 2, and Games 3 and 4 not quite as much, but it was still a close series, closer than a 4-game sweep would indicate.
Yeah, and it was tough. I thought they had the recipe. They had the great goaltending. They in round 1 seemed to find a way to score from all different lines. Anders Lee looked like a real leader on the team, as he should be, right? Brock Nelson was having a good one. Jordan Eberle showed up and looked like young little Ebbs from a couple of years ago.
What you remember?
And,
when he carried, even back when he carried Canada to, that miracle goal, getting through Russia with 3 seconds left or whatever. He looked like a really good player for sure.
Yeah, but Brind'Amour just really picked that team apart and really drove them to make some mistakes, turn over the pucks, and Carolina was always there. They play that style of run and gun game,
and they throw a lot of shots on net,
and they try to force as many turnovers as possible.
Yeah.
They really, really forecheck hard.
High volume team, they like a lot of turnovers, a lot of shots on net from everywhere, right? And their defense is good at getting shots through. They have some really good offensive defensemen.
We're looking at obviously already Carolina and Boston in the Eastern Final, and that's definitely a series I'll be joining in to watch every game.
Yeah, it'll be a good one.
I think it'll be good. Yeah, Carolina. I love Justin Williams, Mr. Game 3, Mr. Game 4, 5, 6, 7. He's phenomenal to watch in the playoffs. He creates so much opportunity out there for that team. He's a guy who should be paid $10 million a game to have in the playoffs alone.
He's a good leader in the playoffs. I think that they're going to meet their match in Boston. That's just my opinion. I think that Boston just brings too much experience because outside of Williams and a couple other guys, I just think Carolina is not quite there yet. We're going to see. It's going to be good, though.
Do the old dogs in Boston have the steam here?
I don't know. We're going to see. I think that Columbus is a very similar team to Carolina. And this is coming from me. I picked Carolina to possibly be a sleeper. I just think the matchup wise, I almost would have given Carolina a better shot if it was Tampa. That's just my opinion because I just think they match up stylistic wise. I think that you saw what Boston can do against a team like Columbus, which is a smaller speed team. I wouldn't say that and a little less physical. I wouldn't say that Columbus or the Carolina is a physical team, overly physical.
Right.
And I just think that it'll be close. I believe it'll go 6 or 7 games. I'm giving the edge to Boston. I think Boston has another run in them, and I believe they're going to be in the finals. Like we talked about last week, though, my record has been abysmal when I've been coming to picking people in the playoffs. So we'll see. It should be a very interesting series. What do you think? Before we move on to that, too, we can go back to the Carolina-New York series. There's a little bit of controversy in that series. What did you think of the head tap incidents where Nelson tapped McElhaney on the head, and then after the series was over, Dougie Hamilton returned the favor in the handshake line.
Yeah, I'm kind of a kid on it. I thought it was kind of funny. I thought it was a good little gesture how Carolina kept that to themselves until the handshake portion to let them know that this wasn't something we missed. But just so you know, we keep things in the back of our head, buddy, and we use everything we can against you, right? So if Dougie Hamilton played with a little more of an edge, right, because Nelson tapped his goalie on the head,
Yeah.
then so be it. You got to watch what you do in the playoffs. What should you say to guys? What should you do on the ice? Because anybody can turn around and use what you do against you. And I think that was a little, hey, just so you know, I don't forget,
Yeah, you know what? Folks, if you're listening, Mark and I usually agree on most stuff. I think this is one of the things we disagree on. I think that...
can't believe you don't agree with that.
I think... how dare you, right? I just think that the Nelson play on McElhaney was wrong. And if it was me, the team should have responded right away with something, go after him in the corner. I mean, none of that... You don't really see a lot of fights.
Yeah,
you don't really see a lot of fights in the playoffs anymore, or, even in the regular season. I think that there should have been a response there. My viewpoint on it is this. It's twofold. First being, if it was any other team outside of Carolina, it would be a little less... to me, it'd be a little less telling of the character, maybe, and maybe I'm just reading too much into it. But this is a team that obviously, kind of split the NHL fan base over the season with their storm surges. They kind of polarized the fan base. A lot of people loved it. A lot of people didn't love it. I was kind of indifferent to it. It didn't really bother me too much.
Yeah.
But when you compare that with a guy going in the handshake line and patting a guy on the head, I just think with that team, it's just it's a continuation of a pattern. And what I mean by this is this, Mark. To me, for anybody who's a fan of anything besides hockey, if you're a baseball fan, anybody in Canada who's a baseball fan would be familiar with the Jose Bautista bat flip and the response the next season by Texas. Do you remember this? Mm-hmm. When they waited to the last at bat in the season and they beamed Bautista in the last at bat. They had plenty of opportunities before to do something about him bat flipping, but they waited until he couldn't do anything in response to bean him and then punch him in the face. Do you remember all this, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I viewed this. It's like Dougie Hamilton's trying to send a message and act tough, but here you're waiting till the handshake line when Brock Nelson can't do anything to respond.
Yeah.
To me, that was kind of my viewpoint. It is now Brock Nelson's going to have to stew on it for the whole offseason. And we know hockey players have long memories. He's not going to forget that. So maybe,
yeah. That's a good point.
It's so... Does Dougie Hamilton really care at this point because they're moving on? No, probably not. But that's going to come back.
Maybe a little bit of a rivalry
could be
has been born today.
Maybe a little bit.
You never know.
And rivalries are never a bad thing, right?
No, exactly.
I mean, as much as us as Blue Jays fans, going to baseball real quick again, hated Texas. I mean, that rivalry made for good theater, right? Especially when the Blue Jays swept them that year in the playoffs. So. Yeah, you know what? It's a good rivalry. It is what it is, and I see your point of view, and I kind of, I agree a little bit, but at the same time, I'm like, if Hamilton really wanted to make a statement, he maybe should have made that a little sooner and not in the handshake line. So, but it is what it is.
We're just looking at the Islanders really quickly. I mean, as a team that's out of the playoffs now and looking to provide a little bit of extra boost next year, I think we can agree on this really quickly that the department they need to replenish is their scoring power. They lost that.
Yeah.
Islander fans won't admit it now, but in a month or two, they'll all say quietly in their bubble baths while they're sleeping at night that they miss John Tavares. And they won't say it out loud anywhere else. It'll be in the privacy and comfort of their own home.
Yeah, they're not going to go back and admit it now after the way they handled it.
But you need scoring help, right?
And I don't know, did you see that meme? That it was a picture of one of the fans when he was in New York for the first time, and they had the signs "We don't need you." Remember those signs? Do you see that meme that came out and someone had scratched out "Don't" and it's like "We might need you"? I thought that was a little comical, right? After they got swept by Carolina, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe we did need Tavares, right?
They needed him.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's tough to replace a guy like John Tavares. So,
Exactly.
and the ironic part about it is the Leafs probably could have used some of the defense that New York had.
Well, they have. Okay, so just looking at it real quick here, that they had about $9 million in cap. UFAs next year include Eberle, Nelson, Anders Lee, Valtteri Filppula, and anyone else noted. Actually, Robert Lehner's UFA next year.
And you know what's embarrassing to admit? Until you just said it right now, I had no idea that's where Filppula was.
Well, yeah, he's
kind of been. He's like, I didn't even realize Valtteri Filppula was still playing in the league. To be honest with you, so
it's funny.
I guess I did, but it's just you don't see any of the stuff from the New York Islanders very much. Like we don't get that up here in Canada, right? Mm-hmm. So you kind of forget he's kind of drifted from team to team a little bit. But anyway, that's kind of a side point.
I think that they have it's actually funny that their number one goalie in Lehner. I think he's the number one.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think Grice is a really good guy.
I think he's a good guy, but moving forward, in another year, Thomas Grice is a UFA.
And he's how old now, right?
Yeah, he's 33.
33, right?
Yeah. So I think moving forward, I think they obviously have to lock down Robin Lehner to a long-term contract. I think moving forward, what we saw from him this year wasn't a fluke by any means.
He played well in Buffalo too when he was there.
I think he might take a short bridge deal, prove it one more year, and then we can afford it. I could definitely see him doing something like that.
Yeah, very good point.
As far as everybody else goes, I see them getting most of everything done here. It shouldn't be too hard for them, and they might be able to afford another piece that they need to bring in. Talking about some of the big names that are available is Panarin, Jeff Skinner, Joe Pavelski, Kevin Hayes, and Ryan Dzingel are just kind of some of the forwards that come to terms. Whether they can afford one of those, maybe they want a defenseman. There's some good defensemen out there too. Erik Karlsson, he'll be hitting the free agency market.
Think he'll make it to free agency?
Oh yeah, well, I think a day or two.
Yeah, check it out at least.
Sure, man. The NHL commissioner Gary Bettman tells one player every year to just hang on.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Just for giggles, right?
There's one for the conspiracy theorists.
Exactly. I think they got a good team to go forward. They're just going to have to find some scoring there. Who am I looking at there? Their young guy there on the team.
And wait, Mark, 1 second. If you guys listen really carefully, everyone be really quiet. That's the sound of all the conspiracy theorists clapping at Mark's conspiracy theory. So, anyway, sorry, move on.
It's so true, man.
It is. It's
take
true.
a look at this stuff.
I would agree. I agree. He's pulling strings, man.
He loves to see this type of stuff.
Gary Bettman, we know he's a avid listener of our program. So Gary Bettman, if you're listening again,
he is. Yeah,
he is. He listens to us all the time, right? He should come on and debunk these conspiracy theories. Anyways, we're getting sidetracked again.
It's so true.
Yeah. Anyways, you were saying they're good young guys.
Barzal is kind of. He still had a good year, but I think that they deserve to see a little bit more out of him.
Yeah,
and
I
they
think
will.
so.
He's only 21 years old.
Exactly.
He's got lots of time to grow. I think they have a good team.
McKinnon took 3 or 4 years to grow, right? So
that's true. So now that we've talked about all the losers and spent way too much time on that, we got a couple games that are still left to go forth and we can move these playoffs forward.
Start with Dallas and St. Louis.
Dallas and St. Louis are going into a Game 7.
The most unanticipated series up here in Canada.
But probably most
one of the better ones
to watch.
And that's been the ironic part, right?
That's actually been the one series that I've been glued to.
Yeah?
Yeah, I love watching the Dallas and St. Louis series.
And again, another thing I'm ashamed to admit, folks, it's the one series that I have not watched 1 minute of.
Oh, man.
Unfortunately, I don't know, I just can't get into it.
Ben Bishop's been awesome.
Yeah.
Bennington on the other side's been fantastic to watch.
A lot of really good players in that series. So to me, I don't know why I have had trouble getting into that series. It has been that tough. I've been following them all, watching highlights, following all the scores, listening to some of them on on the radio, on satellite radio, things like that. Just I haven't got a chance to watch any of the games, just timing and stuff. Not because I didn't want to. I'm kind of just being a goof there, but yeah, it's been a fantastic series, back and forth, right?
Yeah, I mean, Dallas has had the punch. Zuccarello has fit in really well with them in the playoffs. Here's a guy that needs to stay with that team long term for them to continue their success. I think it's really opened up Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin as well. It's gave them some room. Klingberg's been amazing from the playoffs. I mean, like I said, Ben Bishop, big scare for him, taking the puck high off the collarbone like that. Looked kind of scary. I couldn't believe they stayed in the game.
But Ben Bishop's always struck me as a pretty tough guy.
Yeah,
all hockey players are, right?
He left, and they're saying that he'll be back to play for Game 7.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he will be. I think it was a stinger.
Yeah, he guy's a warrior too, though, right? So, he's not going to miss a Game 7 to go on to the conference finals. So, who are you picking in that series to move on? Considering we haven't had to pick anybody yet because the other two series in the East are over. Who are you picking in Game 7?
I'm picking Dallas.
I would say too, yeah. I think they'll pull it off.
I think they're going to do it. And that kind of leads us into both the Sharks and the Avs.
Save this one for last.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which has been another, amazing series to watch. If you're a Sharks fan or an Avs fan.
Yeah.
The Avs are still pulling it together. I mean, one game they look really good. The next game they just break down a little bit. But that's San Jose. You give San Jose an edge, and they've got a lot of good leaders on that team that can, step up and break the puck.
I mean, you give them a 5-minute power play when it should be a 2-minute power play. I mean, hey, yeah, they'll take advantage of it.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes here, but
where is I going? Oh yeah,
sorry, Mark.
I think Logan Couture is the captain of that team in the future.
I mean, and he's not a young guy though, but I agree. If Pavelski doesn't come back, he's probably a good candidate because I think Thornton's close to retirement.
Yeah, he's had his edge, man. Couture to me has never been that player to really step up and take that leadership role
until this year.
He probably should.
Yeah,
but until this year, and he might be. I think he's 29, 30 years old almost.
I mean, you don't think Evander Kane should be captain? He can captain from the penalty box.
Yeah. That's a good role model.
Guy spends half his time in there. I mean, he can still captain from there, right?
I think so.
Anyways, we're getting a little off topic. We're a little crazy this show, guys. So we're just getting a little wacky, but
the playoffs.
That's what happens in the playoffs. Make you that way, right?
It's so hard to follow, man.
It is.
I swear, you just can't. You can't put your hand down on anything.
It's tough. I guess we're kind of creatures of habit. We like consistency and to know what's going on. But so, who do you pick out of that series?
I mean, I think the Sharks are going to come out still. I think they're going to end it in the Game 6 here.
I would agree. As much as I don't want to see the Sharks move on, and this is only simply for the fact that I think that Vegas should be there. So let's touch on that really quick before we move on.
Okay.
So over the last week or two since the series in Vegas, everybody, I mean, if you don't know what happened there, you had to have been living under a rock, right? Mm-hmm. So Vegas GM comes out and says that the league apologized to them for the play. The two referees have not got a second round assignment. We talked about this on last week's show. So obviously the NHL is admitting that they made a mistake there. Then today, or it was either today or yesterday, a article comes out. Joe Pavelski, obviously the player that it happened to, gets asked, does he think it was a 5-minute power play? Guy, he says, no. Wasn't a 5-minute power play. Wasn't malicious intent on the part of either Eakin or Stastny. So he says all this. So I mean, if you're Vegas and you're sitting at home and all these things have happened and then you hear the player that it happened to come out and say this, what are you feeling right now?
And he says it wasn't 5 minutes, but hey, I'll take it.
Yeah, and he's like, we'll take it for sure, yeah. What are you thinking?
Well, I don't know.
I think we all know what you're thinking.
I think it's honestly coming out of Pavelski because how many news reporters have honestly been probably hounding him to say something about it. Right?
Yeah, and he finally broke his silence.
And he goes, "Yeah, it's just I think it sounds more of like a frustration answer." Right? I don't think there's meant to be any shot taken out.
Not at all.
About it.
No, Pavelski's a classy guy. I'm not saying anything like he was taking shots.
No, but it could be taken that way as well, right?
Could be. It could be like, hey, look at us. But I don't
just
think
rub it in a little bit deeper.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if that was really the way. I just think it was an honest assessment. Good for him.
But let's think about it as if you're a Vegas fan. Do you care to hear any more about this?
No,
obviously no.
And when you hear about it, you're probably pretty ticked.
Yeah.
And I mean,
it was a mistake, and the league's owned up to it. It's water under the bridge already. Oh no, Pavelski's surfaced.
Yeah.
He also has his 2 cents to add in.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, hey, maybe they'll go the NFL route too. Maybe the fans will stand outside at the Stanley Cup final and picket and demand that the game be played again. And because the crazy thing too is,
hey, let's replay the last 9 minutes of Game
7. Like, it's been a wacky year in sports too, if you think about it, right? It's just been that play in football with New Orleans and who are they playing? New Orleans and who? Why am I blanking on this?
I don't know.
Who is the team that New Orleans is playing? I mean, I know there's some guys out there who are screaming if they're listening to us, are screaming and saying, "Oh, whoever it was." But anyways, the play got botched big time. Pass interference call. If I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. But anyways, again, getting sidetracked. But it's just been a wacky year in sports. Not just hockey, obviously. It's just been weird.
Well, anything can happen.
Yeah, anything can happen. Anyways, we just thought we'd touch on that because, I mean, it was kind of one of those controversial things, and it changed the
and it can't
trajectory.
Get dropped.
No, because it changed the complete trajectory of the playoffs, right?
Well, and they're also been talking about the refs a lot too, and the refs get so much negative feedback. And
it's only going to get worse for them.
Saying how those 2 refs also haven't refed another game yet in round 2, right?
Yeah.
And you never know if that changes going forth.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
It is a good point, right?
But outside of that, it's been some good hockey between Colorado and San Jose.
Pavelski says that, or there has been a statement said that he might be back for Game 6, but more possibly like Game 7. The Avalanche, though, they have a chance to still hang into this series. I'm not counting them out completely because they've gotten this far, and I think that anybody who's gotten this far in the playoffs so far always deserves a chance.
Mm-hmm.
They could force a Game 7 still.
Yeah, they're definitely a better team than the regular season record indicated.
And they are in Colorado for Game 6 as well.
Yeah, and they play well in Colorado.
Yeah.
I mean, so far they
McKinnon
played
and
very well.
Rantanen have been unbelievable for them. The 2 of them have 26 points combined, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, the amount of points they've scored. So it's anybody's series, but I do agree that I think San Jose takes it. Unfortunately for Colorado fans, the experience I think is going to shine through.
So maybe now that the dust has settled and all the cuckoos have got locked back up again, we will be locked up by the end of the show.
Yeah, we will be.
Maybe now we just go back to okay, it's going to be just San Jose and Boston. We all know they're the best teams left on paper.
On paper, for sure.
So let's just throw them in the final. Maybe that's what we end up seeing.
The only thing I'll say about San Jose is, and I think I said it last show too, is with the amount of time that their players are playing in games, like I said, they play in a lot of top-heavy hockey. Do they have the steam to go all the way? I mean, we'll see. And then if you get all the way to the Cup Finals, then you got to run into Boston. If Boston makes it through, they got a tough road ahead of them because they're not as deep as maybe people thought they were.
Which veteran are you going to cheer for, Zdeno Chara or Joe Thornton when it gets to the finals? Both 42-year-old guys skate around on the ice playing for the puck. Playing for the cup.
Yeah, neither. I got my bocce ball league firing up here real soon, so I'm going to be paying attention to.
Jeez.
That's what I'll choose bocce ball over that.
It's just because you're sour because it's a San Jose Sharks, eh?
I am sour, yeah. I'm just not a fan.
That's okay.
No, I shouldn't say that to the San Jose fans who might listen to this.
We sulk in Canada for a little bit
after
your teams get out.
We're a pretty sulky bunch up here in Canada when it comes to hockey.
I spritz back up always for the Cup final.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Depends who's in it.
You're only a couple weeks left.
Only a couple weeks left.
It's done.
Yeah, and then everybody's in the same position again.
That's right.
The Cup is a possibility for everybody. Even you, Edmonton Oilers.
That's right. Well, one thing we didn't quickly talk about. We have a couple minutes here to spare. So one thing we didn't talk about is the Ken Holland.
Yeah, we're saving that for last here.
And this is This is the grand finale
Yeah.
of the show today. We're
The
talking
Edmonton
about
Oilers.
the Edmonton Oilers.
Dun-dun-dun.
They got Ken Holland.
Yeah.
Did they get the right man for their GM job? What do you think, Brad?
I don't know. It's almost like saying you got the best boat captain in the world, and was he the right captain for the right guy to lead the Titanic? You know, that's kind of how it feels, right? The Oilers have been sinking for so long.
So it really doesn't matter what you're gonna do here.
That's being a little dramatic, I guess. I think Ken Holland is I don't know if he's the perfect candidate, but I think he's a very, very good candidate. I think he's a better choice than they've chosen in the past, and I think
he's got
do
a good
Job.
resume.
Yeah, I think he'll do a good job. The thing is, you have to wonder sometimes, and we're going to see him try if he can prove it. Detroit was so good for so long. You think, was that just Ken Holland, or was that a combination of Ken Holland and, I mean, obviously he's a very good GM. However, was it a lot of their scouts too? You got to wonder that, right? Because a lot of the times the guys that get drafted, the GM gets credit for those things, but it's not the GM who's finding those guys.
Well, the other knock on him was that he hasn't exactly showed that he can adjust to the cap era.
True.
And has brought in a team that can really challenge for a cup, even though that they've made the cup, they made the playoffs during the cap era, but haven't gone out of the first round.
That's a very good point.
As well, even being led by Mike Babcock, who's facing similar issues in Toronto. I mean, who
would have thought that people would be talking about him getting fired?
Just to say this, but I can't believe that that's even in the news. That's just Toronto fans for you.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Just lighting up a fire. Up the fire in the middle of nowhere. It has no right to be lit.
Everybody in Toronto needs to step back from the edge of the CN Tower. Just relax a little bit. Where you're not San Jose here, who their star players are in their late 30s.
Tell Mike Babcock he can come back to town.
I mean, he didn't coach a great game in that Game 7. However, the thing is, and this is we talked about it earlier about the New York Islanders Carolina series, but it seemed it was a lot closer than it seemed. There was a lot of those series where, like the Toronto Boston series. If one or two games could have swung the other way, and they very well could have, it would have been a different series. Obviously, Calgary, Colorado, the game 2, 3, and 3, or game 2 and 4. One of those two, it went to overtime, and it could have went either way. You look at a couple of the other series. There was just a lot of closer series than maybe what it seemed like. So for Babcock, I don't think that it was a disaster. I mean, they took Boston in Game 7. It just, and I think a lot of people thought that the Boston got outplayed by Toronto in Game 7, and it's just lucky breaks or bounces. I mean, hockey is a lot. Every team's closer to each other's talent level nowadays than ever before, right?
Right.
So the parity is there,
right,
which is a good thing to see. So, yeah, I think everybody in Toronto needs to relax. Let Babcock do his work.
Yeah, exactly.
So we kind of got, again, this is the getting sidetracked show.
Ken Holland, Brad.
Ken Holland. What do you think? Do you think he's the right guy for Edmonton?
Yeah, I do. Oh, look, a butterfly. Anyway.
Whoa. Yeah. Stop the show. We got to catch this butterfly.
Sorry, I just pulled a Brad there.
Yeah, exactly.
Come back. Ken Holland, I think, is the good man for the job. He's a veteran. I don't think this is a team that you need to throw some fresh sea legs rookie GM into. You don't need a Kyle Dubas here.
No?
That you're just cutting the reins off.
Magic Man, Kyle Dubas.
Yeah, you don't need to do that here. Kyle, well, okay, whatever.
Yeah, okay, we're getting sidetracked. Butterfly.
Ken Holland is stepping into a mess. But I think this is a mess that needs to be cleaned up by a professional.
I agree.
And I think Ken Holland brings that professionalism to the table that they need. He's going to find a coach that will fit the scheme, that team is probably more influenced to play. He's going to be able to find that for them, right? He's seen it all. right? Mm-hmm. So I think he is the best guy to have there to help make that next coaching decision. And hopefully they can get this all in place, I think, before the draft. And, you think about the draft, we're only about maybe a month and a half away from it or so, right?
Yeah, it's hard to believe that.
It's coming up so fast. So I think it's good. It's not like the huge bold move. They also gave him $5 million a year for 5 years. And I think what they'll do with him also is bring in a little predecessor along the way as well. And I think that, Ken Holland will help build up somebody like that as well.
Yeah, I think that, before we go any further, and we can all quiet down here again for the conspiracy theorists, but do you think that wait, can you hear them? Here we go, guys. Do you think that there isn't such thing as an old boys club in Edmonton, and that they're still there if there is?
Oh yeah, man! They're like they are the conspiracy theorists, like leaders.
Yeah, so you kind of wonder, like, is Ken Holland going to make a difference in that sense, right? A lot of Edmonton fans after this season, how bad it went, are probably thinking like the worst case scenario that the old boys club is still in place. So what does it matter? You could put in the best guy in the world there and the best coach. So
what is that secret group there in the world that they called?
They were called the Wine Club or something. Or like what were they called? They have a name for them.
The secret.
In Edmonton there?
No.
Oh, I thought you meant the Edmonton.
Never mind.
Which secret club are we talking about here?
We go with the old secret clubs of the old days with all the presidents who would be in them.
Oh, like the stonemasons or the Masons, whatever they're called.
That's exactly.
But remember, that's what you've heard the people in Edmonton call like the old boys club there, like the wine tasting club or something like that.
The wine and cracking club.
Because they all, I don't know.
Jeez.
I haven't been up a touch there, but like Craig McTavish and all those guys, right? We're getting way sidetracked here.
Gates is just trying to smoosh himself into there.
Well, that's what it is, right? His boyhood heroes. So, sorry, Edmonton fans. We don't mean to make a laughing matter, but it's you know what? It'll be interesting. Getting on a serious note, I can't stop laughing, but it'll be interesting to see if he makes a bold move, like if he trades like a Draisaitl. Because you got to think about this, and I can't remember if we've talked about this before, but you think about if they keep McDavid and Draisaitl, what other pieces are they going to trade to get a significant pieces back?
They can't.
There's nothing, right?
Unfortunately, they're like 4-year rebuild mode here. What else do you do?
Exactly. And you think about it, though, if they want to go into rebuild mode, you have McDavid and Draisaitl. Do you think that the team is ever going to finish bad enough to get a top 3-4 pick with those two players? They won't, right?
Maybe, actually.
Well, I don't know. I don't think they'll be bad enough.
For the lottery picks to fall to your favor.
That's what you hope for. But if you're looking at it, that team's probably going to finish 9, 10, 11, 12 forever if they keep those two players and they just stay on the course that they're on trying to rebuild. It's not like they're before they had McDavid and they had Draisaitl where they were still bad teams. You know what I mean? Like those two players scoring 100 points every year are going to carry them to 9, 10, 11.
That's why I think it's good that they have a guy like Ken Holland there, because this is a huge mess. And we're just some little punks, honestly, in the hockey world.
Yeah, we have no idea.
Listen
what
to
we're
us
talking about.
telling
we can't even stay on topic here.
Exactly. If it's up to us, the butterflies would be doing everything.
Exactly. This would be a butterfly catching tutorial, not a hockey show, right?
It's such an interesting off season to come for a lot of teams. I am curious to see on how they turn it around. Like I said, there are some UFAs out there that they can go after. They can't give up any picks because they need to bring all those home.
Yeah.
But it'll be tough, if they can play their cards right. Maybe they can get a UFA to resign there that makes a difference, right? And as for that, you just got to build off your picks. But anyway,
yeah.
On that note,
should be an interesting off season for sure.
We still have playoff hockey to talk about until then. Edmonton, Toronto, Calgary, all the fans across Canada,
Montreal, Ottawa, Vancouver.
We're all looking forward to the off seasons, but at the same time, we do still have some good hockey left. And these boys who we're watching on TV are also from Canada as well, in some teams.
Yeah, you got to keep that in mind.
So let's keep cheering them on. Let's keep tuning in, and let's figure out who wins the cups. Let's not be big sissies and sit back and cry in the corners now.
Unless
Get back into hockey mode.
unless you have your bocce ball league that's firing up, or you want to chase butterflies. Those two things we can accept.
Softball tournaments.
Or softball tournaments, yeah. Poutine eating contests.
Putin.
Those are the 4 things that we would accept reasons as you won't watch playoff hockey.
There you go. So, on that note, please follow us at Facebook or Twitter, the Neutral Zone, or at the Neutral Zone CDN.
On
if
Twitter,
you're
yeah.
Twitter. Check us up, hit us out, say hello if you're out there, and if you're listening, we'd love to hear some feedback from you on how we're doing.
Yeah, and if you managed to make it this far in this crazy show that we're listening to right now, we will possibly have some big news coming up in the off season, possibly NHL related, possibly something else, but we'll keep you in tune and let you know.
Huge news. So
Huge news.
for anybody who's following us out there, you're in for a treat.
Yeah.
All right, we're out of here. Peace.
See you later.